It was supposed to be an ordinary royal exhibition. Polished floors, velvet ropes, and curious onlookers waiting to glimpse pieces of forgotten history. But when a royal guard opened an old, dust-covered suitcase hidden deep beneath Windsor's west wing, the crowd fell silent. Inside lay something no one expected. Not gold, not jewels, but a secret so personal, it rewrote part of royal history itself. What began as a quiet afternoon of duty turned into a moment that made even the most stoic guards tremble. Because sometimes, the most powerful discoveries aren't displayed in glass cases. They're found where time tried to hide them. If this kind of mystery makes your heart race just a little, you're in the right place. Hit that like button if you love true royal stories that feel almost too real to believe. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next emotional royal moment we uncover together. And hey, drop your thoughts below. What do you think was inside that suitcase? They say Windsor Castle never truly sleeps. Even in the stillness of night, echoes of history hum through its corridors. Whispers of footsteps from centuries long gone, voices of kings and queens who once walked beneath those vaulted ceilings. But for Royal Guard Thomas Hale, that night began like any other. The shift was quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of silence that makes your thoughts sound louder than they should. Thomas had worked those halls for 12 years. He knew the rhythm of every creak, every distant draft. But when a faint metallic clink echoed from the far end of the west wing, it made him stop mid-step. That part of the castle hadn't been open to staff in years, sealed off, forgotten, and rumored to be under restoration. Yet the sound came again, like something shifting or falling. He hesitated. Probably just the pipes, he muttered to himself, but his hand gripped the flashlight tighter. You know that feeling? When curiosity pulls harder than caution? That's exactly what led him past the velvet barrier, down a narrow hallway coated in dust. The air was colder there, and the walls carried a faint scent of age and oil. His boots left perfect prints in the layer of neglect that coated the floor. As he moved further, his light fell on something half hidden behind a draped canvas. It was a suitcase, leather, weathered and stamped with the royal crest barely visible beneath years of grime. For a moment, he just stared at it. How had no one noticed it before? The tag tied to its handle read in faded ink, "Property of HRH, do not remove." No initials, no date. Just that single cryptic note. Thomas swallowed. His job was to report anything unusual to the head of security. But another thought crept in. What if this was something historical, something lost? He knelt down, brushing the dust off the top, and that's when he noticed something else. A faint scent of old paper, mixed with lavender. Almost like a memory that had been trapped for too long. When he radioed it in, the castle staff reacted quickly. Within minutes, several officials and a small security team arrived. Among them was Lady Evelyn Roth, the curator of royal artifacts. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "No record of any suitcase under that name. It shouldn't be here." The crowd of staff gathered as she gently examined it. The brass latches were corroded but intact. Cameras flashed, whispers rose. Everyone could sense something extraordinary was about to happen. Thomas stepped back, still watching. What was inside? Documents? A hidden jewel? Or something that should have remained buried? Lady Evelyn took a deep breath. "We'll open it here," she said softly. The crowd drew closer. The moment the first latch clicked open, the sound echoed like a heartbeat through the empty hallway. When the lid lifted, a chill seemed to ripple through the air. Inside wasn't gold or silver, but letters, dozens of them, tied together with faded ribbons. Some had wax seals still unbroken. Alongside them lay a photograph, sepia-toned, showing a young woman in royal attire, smiling beside a man in military uniform. Thomas leaned forward, eyes narrowing. He recognized the uniform, early 1900s, the kind worn by British officers during the Great War. But the man's face, it wasn't anyone from the official royal portraits. And the woman's eyes, Soft, kind, and hauntingly familiar, almost looked like someone he'd seen hanging in the main gallery. Lady Evelyn whispered, "This can't be right." On the back of the photo, in delicate handwriting, were just 3 words: "Until we meet again."
The curator turned pale. "That's the Duchess of Arundel. Before her title was revoked," she said quietly. "The one history erased." At that moment, you could have heard a pin drop. Even the castle seemed to be listening. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Someone recorded on their phone. Knowing this moment, somehow, mattered. The letters inside were dated between 1914 and 1916, all signed with the same initial. A, and every one of them was addressed to my beloved E. Thomas felt a weight settle in his chest. This wasn't just a forgotten keepsake. It was evidence of a love story that had been silenced. But why had it been hidden? Who put it there? He watched as Lady Evelyn carefully unfolded one of the letters. The ink was faded, but legible. "My dearest E, I cannot bear the silence between us. They forbid our union, claim it would stain the crown. But I would trade every title, every medal, just to see you again under the old oak tree. If they ever find this, know that I never stopped loving you." Her hands trembled. "This isn't just personal. This is royal history rewritten," she murmured. By now, word had spread through the castle. Senior staff arrived, then the press. Within an hour, a small crowd gathered behind the ropes, eyes wide with awe and disbelief. Cameras rolled as the guard stood quietly beside the suitcase he'd found. Thomas wasn't a man of drama, but watching people cry softly at the words of 2 lost souls, he felt something stir deep within him, a kind of empathy that transcended rank and time. Because in that moment, it didn't matter that they were royals or commoners. It was simply the story of 2 hearts torn apart by duty. He looked around the hallway once more, the same dusty corridor that hours ago had been silent and forgotten. Now, it had become a stage where history itself whispered back to life. Before the suitcase was taken for preservation, Thomas noticed something glinting beneath the letters. He reached in carefully and lifted a small silver locket. Inside it was a lock of hair, tied with blue ribbon, and a second photograph. This time, it wasn't just the Duchess and the officer. There was a child, a baby, smiling. The room froze. Lady Evelyn covered her mouth. "There's no record of her ever having a child," she whispered. And that's when everything changed. Because that simple discovery, that photograph, hinted at a royal bloodline that had never been acknowledged. Thomas felt the chill again. He didn't know it yet, but what he'd uncovered that night would shake not only the crowd in that hallway, but the entire nation in the days to come.
By morning, the castle that usually hummed with quiet protocol buzzed with nervous energy. News of the suitcase had spread faster than wildfire, from the servant quarters to the royal press office. No one knew exactly what was inside, only that a royal guard had uncovered something that might rewrite history. The corridors of Windsor, once filled with calm tradition, now felt like a hive of whispers. Words like forbidden love, lost duchess, and royal child floated in the air like dust motes catching sunlight. Thomas Hale stood off to the side, still processing it all. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. He was a man of quiet duty. Yet now, he was the one everyone looked at when the subject came up. The god who stumbled upon what the media was already calling the Windsor secret. Lady Evelyn Roth had spent the entire night cataloguing the letters and photographs. Her eyes were red from sleeplessness, but her excitement was unmistakable. "Thomas," she said gently that morning, "these letters, they change everything we thought we knew about that era." He nodded, unsure what to say. "And the child?" She sighed. "That's the mystery. No records, no lineage listed, nothing. It's as if that baby was erased deliberately." That afternoon, the royal archivist gathered in the West Wing, joined by a small group of historians and an official representative from the palace. The room fell silent as Lady Evelyn began to read aloud one of the letters recovered from the suitcase. Her voice trembled slightly, but carried the kind of weight only truth could hold. "Dearest E, if fate has decided against us, then let this be my confession to time. Our love was never treason, only too human for a crown that faded. Should our child grow without my name, tell him I loved her more than I loved the throne itself." A single tear rolled down Evelyn's cheek before she looked up. "This is signed by Arthur." "Arthur?" someone asked. But the only royal Arthur in that period was. "Exactly," she interrupted quietly. "Prince Arthur, Duke of Kent." Gasps filled the room. The Duke of Kent, a royal figure whose name rarely appeared in modern royal discussions, had died under mysterious circumstances during the war. Official history described him as unmarried, devoted to his duties, and loyal to the crown. But the letters in that suitcase told a very different story. Thomas leaned back, his heart pounding. He wasn't a historian, but even he knew the gravity of what they were uncovering. "So, this child could have been an heir?" he asked softly. "Possibly," Evelyn said, "or at least of royal descent. But if that's true, then someone went to great lengths to bury the truth." The palace representative, a stern woman in a dark suit, spoke up. "This must be handled delicately. The monarchy's reputation depends on context and discretion. We can't confirm anything publicly until every document is verified." Thomas glanced at the suitcase resting on the table, its worn leather edges frayed by time. He couldn't help but wonder how many secrets had been swallowed by silence just like this one. And deeper still, he wondered something even bolder. What if the family themselves didn't know? Days passed. The story leaked anyway. The press began running headlines like, "Hidden Love Affair Rocks Royal Archives. Secret Letters May Reveal Forgotten Heir. Windsor Guard Discovery Raises Questions About Royal Lineage." Crowds gathered outside the castle gates, tourists and journalists alike, hoping to glimpse the man who found the suitcase. Thomas hated it. He wasn't after fame. He'd just been doing his job. Yet every camera pointed his way reminded him that truth had a price. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, the investigation deepened. Experts traced the paper, ink, and handwriting, confirming the letters were authentic, written over a century ago by the Duke himself. Forensic analysis even revealed faint fingerprints on one envelope, matching those found on a documented royal artifact of the same period. The revelation hit like thunder. What they held wasn't rumor or speculation. It was genuine royal correspondence. But the mystery didn't end there. One historian uncovered a photograph of a small countryside cottage near Balmoral, dated 1916, the same year as the last letter. The photo matched the handwriting on one of the envelopes that said simply, "Our place, where the world cannot find us." And inside the suitcase, hidden beneath the lining, was a train ticket to Aberdeen, one that had never been used. Thomas stared at that ticket for a long time when they showed it to him. He was going to run away, he murmured. "Leave everything." Lady Evelyn nodded slowly. It seems he planned to choose love over duty, but something stopped him. A pause lingered between them, the kind of silence where history seems to breathe. That night, Thomas walked the same corridor again, alone. The West Wing had been sealed once more, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was still there. The air carried that same lavender scent he'd noticed the first night. He paused near the spot where he'd found the suitcase. "Whoever you were," he whispered, "I hope you're at peace now." For a moment, it felt like the walls sighed back. Maybe it was a draft. Or maybe, just maybe, history has its own way of acknowledging when someone finally listens. The next morning brought another twist. The restoration team working in the Royal Library discovered a sealed drawer within an old oak desk, the very same style as the one seen in the Duchess's photograph. Inside the drawer lay a single folded letter addressed to "My son." Lady Evelyn read it with trembling hands. "If you ever find these words, know that you will love beyond duty. The crown may hide us, but love cannot die behind its walls." And at the bottom, in faint ink, the same signature, Arthur. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. "This was never meant to be found," she whispered. Thomas stood beside her, his voice low. "Maybe it was meant for us, for the world, now." That day, the royal spokesperson made a quiet statement to the press. A collection of historic letters has been discovered. They shed light on a deeply personal chapter of our history. Out of respect for all involved, details will remain private until a full review is complete. But the world didn't stop wondering. Who was the Duchess's child? Did their bloodline continue, hidden among ordinary lives? And if so, could someone walking among us today unknowingly carry the heart of a forgotten royal? The mystery didn't just echo through the castle. It rippled across generations. And Thomas Hale, the quiet guard who stumbled into history, found himself standing at the crossroads between loyalty and truth, unsure which one the crown would want more. The palace rarely comments on rumors, especially those that touch the heart of its lineage. But as whispers of the Windsor secret spread beyond the castle walls, the royal household quietly initiated an internal review. Historians were summoned, archivists combed through records, and for the first time in decades, sealed documents marked private, royal eyes only were reopened. For Thomas Hale, life had changed overnight. One moment he was a nameless god, the next he was at the center of a royal mystery that gripped the nation. But while the tabloids chased gossip and speculation, something else stirred inside the castle, something far deeper than scandal. A private message reached Lady Evelyn Roughlegate one evening. It bore the royal seal and only 3 words: "Come to Balmoral. Urgent." She showed it to Thomas. "They want me to assist in the internal review," she explained, "and they ask that you come too." Thomas blinked. "Me? I'm just a guard." "Not anymore," she said with a faint smile. "You're the man who found the truth." When their car approached Balmoral Castle, mist rolled over the Scottish hills like breath on glass. The landscape was quiet, timeless, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the grand drawing room, a senior royal historian waited for them beside a long oak table covered with neatly arranged files and faded photos. Lady Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. "What is this place?" The historian, an older man named Sir Reginald Farnsworth, adjusted his glasses. "You're standing in what the royal family once called the Chamber of Memory. It holds personal items from generations of monarchs, letters, portraits, vows. Some of them were never meant to see daylight again." He paused before opening a leather-bound volume. Inside was a single, handwritten note signed by Queen Mary, wife of King George V, the very same period as the letters in the Suitcase. Sir Reginald read aloud, "For the sake of the throne and the peace of the realm, I accept the silence that love demands. Let what is lost remain sacred until time chooses mercy." Evelyn leaned closer. "That handwriting." He nodded. "Confirmed. It's the Queen's." Thomas frowned. So she knew about the affair. Sir Reginald sighed. She did more than know. She made a promise to protect her family's image at all costs, even if it meant burying the truth of her own brother's heart. The words hung heavy in the room. A queen had promised silence, not out of malice, but out of fear. As the rain began to patter softly against the tall windows, Evelyn turned to Thomas. "Can you imagine the weight of that? To love someone, but deny their existence for the sake of a crown?" He didn't answer right away. His mind drifted to the photo in the suitcase, the Duchess, the Duke, and their child. How many years had that child lived, never knowing who they truly were? Sir Reginald handed them another document. "This," he said quietly, "was found among Queen Mary's private correspondences. A signed decree, never made public." Thomas leaned forward to read. The paper was fragile, ink faded but clear. "By royal discretion, the child of Arthur shall be placed under guardianship beyond the crown's reach. Their names shall be altered, and their lineage concealed, for their protection and for the realm's stability." Thomas's eyes widened. She hid the child deliberately. Evelyn whispered, "To save them." For a long moment, no one spoke. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming like a heartbeat. Finally, Sir Reginald continued. "The Queen's decision was never recorded in official archives. Only here, privately, the child was reportedly placed with a distant relative under a false surname. After that, the trail goes cold." Thomas exhaled slowly. So the bloodline continued. Hidden. Evelyn nodded. And somewhere out there, someone might still carry it. The historian closed the folder and looked at Thomas thoughtfully. "Tell me, Mr. Hale, have you considered why you found that suitcase? Of all people." Thomas blinked. No. Just luck, I suppose." Reginald's gaze lingered. Sometimes, fate knows when the time for silence has passed. That night, unable to sleep, Thomas wandered through Balmoral's stone corridors. The castle was quiet, save for the occasional creak of old timber. He stopped by a portrait gallery, its oil paintings glowing dimly in the moonlight. There, among the stern faces of past monarchs, hung a smaller portrait, unsigned, almost hidden. The woman's expression was soft, familiar. Her eyes, they were the same as the Duchess in the photograph. Beneath it, a small brass plate read only, Lady Eleanor. Eleanor, the same initial from the letters. E. Thomas stared for a long time, his heart thudding. It was as though the past was staring right back at him, silently asking to be remembered. The following morning, a quiet ceremony took place. The royal historian sealed the suitcase, the letters, and the Queen's note inside a glass case labeled the promise of silence. It was to be stored in the private archives, not erased this time, but preserved in truth. As the officials left, Lady Evelyn turned to Thomas. "Do you think they'll ever make it public?" He shrugged gently. "Maybe one day. But for now, I think knowing it's safe is enough." But deep down, he wasn't sure. Secrets have a strange way of finding light, especially ones born from love. Before leaving, Thomas approached Sir Reginald one last time. "That decree about the child. Do we know where they were sent?" Reginald smiled faintly. "We found a record, one last clue. A family adopted a child matching the description in 1917. The surname changed to Hale." Thomas froze. "Hale?" "Yes," Reginald said softly. "Your surname, isn't it?" The air left Thomas's lungs. His hands trembled. He tried to speak but couldn't. Evelyn stared at him in stunned silence. Sir Reginald placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It seems, Mr. Hale, that history has a way of calling its own home." For the first time in his life, Thomas felt the full weight of the crown, not on his head, but in his heart. The god who found the suitcase was a descendant of the man who wrote those letters. The child whose bloodline was hidden had lived on, quietly, humbly, faithfully, within him. And somewhere, beyond the grandeur of palaces and portraits, the Queen's hidden promise had finally been fulfilled, not through silence, but through discovery. The drive back to Windsor felt longer than usual. Thomas sat quietly in the car beside Lady Evelyn, the landscape rolling past like slow-moving memories. Everything he thought he knew about himself, his duty, his bloodline, his place, had changed. He wasn't just a god anymore. He was part of the very story he'd uncovered. His great-grandfather had been the child of a royal love story buried by silence. And through fate, it had been Thomas who rediscovered it, unknowingly returning a lost chapter of royal blood to its rightful place in history. When they arrived back at the castle, the staff greeted him differently. Some nodded with respect, others whispered behind polite smiles. The press outside clamored for a statement, but Thomas said nothing. He didn't want to be a symbol or a scandal. He just wanted peace. Inside the royal library, the Queen's private secretary awaited him. "Mr. Hale," she said gently, "Her Majesty requests a word with you." Thomas froze. The Queen herself? He followed the secretary through a side corridor until they reached a quiet room filled with sunlight. The Queen, elderly, graceful, her expression serene, looked up from her desk as he entered. "You must be the man who found the suitcase," she said softly. "Yes, Your Majesty," Thomas replied, bowing slightly. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes kind but searching. "You have stirred the past, Mr. Hale. But sometimes the past needs to be stirred to remind us who we truly are." Thomas hesitated. "I never meant to cause trouble." Her lips curved faintly. "You haven't caused trouble. You've brought closure. My grandmother, Queen Mary, made choices to protect this family. Hard choices, perhaps too hard, but you've given her promise a new ending." She rose slowly and walked to the window, gazing toward the palace gardens. "We spend lifetimes guarding the crown," she said quietly, "but in the end, it's love that guards us." Thomas felt a lump rise in his throat. "May I ask, what will happen to the letters?" The Queen turned to face him. "They will be kept, and in time, made known. The truth deserves sunlight, not shadow. And as for you, your service to the crown will continue, but your story, Mr. Hale, is now part of ours." When he left her chambers, he didn't speak a word. He didn't need to. The castle felt different now, not just walls and history, but alive with memory. As he passed the west wing, he paused once more by that dusty corridor where it all began. He could almost see it, the moment the old suitcase first caught his eye. The dust, the silence, the faint echo that had called him in. Maybe it wasn't coincidence. Maybe the past had whispered directly to its own descendant. Lady Evelyn joined him there, holding a folded piece of parchment. "Thomas," she said softly, "before we left Balmoral, Sir Reginald gave me this. He said it belonged to you." Thomas unfolded it carefully. It was a letter written in elegant cursive, old but preserved. "To my child's child. If ever you find these words, know that we loved, truly, deeply, though the world called it forbidden. You carry not just our name, but our courage. Never let duty silence your heart. For love, not lineage, is the truest inheritance." Arthur, tears welled in Thomas's eyes. The handwriting that once belonged to a forgotten prince now reached across time to his own hands. He smiled faintly, whispering, "I found you, great-grandfather. I found you." Weeks later, a small private ceremony was held in the castle's chapel. There was no press, no fanfare, just silence and candlelight. A glass case was placed near the altar, containing the letters, the photograph, and the silver locket. A plaque beneath it read, "In memory of Arthur and Eleanor, a love beyond duty." As a choir of soft voices filled the hall, Thomas stood quietly in the back, his hands clasped. Evelyn stood beside him, eyes glistening. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he said gently. "They did. I just listened." When the service ended, the Queen herself approached the display and laid a single white rose beside it. The gesture was simple, but it meant everything. In that moment, the story came full circle. A century of silence ended with a single act of remembrance, and a god, humble, faithful, and unknowingly royal, restored humanity to history. As the camera pans out, if this were a film, we'd see Windsor glowing in the golden hour light, the gods' changing shift, the flag fluttering above the towers, life continuing, quietly, beautifully, and beneath those ancient stones, the truth now rests, not hidden, but honored. Sometimes history doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers through one man's footsteps in a forgotten hallway, and changes everything. If this story touched your heart, even a little, don't forget to like this video. It helps more people discover stories that remind us how human even the royals truly are. Subscribe to our channel for more true royal stories, tales of love, loss, and legacy that history almost forgot. And tell us in the comments. Sparkles, do you believe some stories wait to be found, or do they find us when the time is right? Thank you for watching. This was Royal Guard Discovery inside an old suitcase shakes the crowd to its core. Until next time, keep your heart open to the whispers of history. Crown.